With the new Overwatch 2 patch coming out today, there's a few changes that might shake up the current meta. On top of the release of Battle of Olympus, there's also 4 hero changes that we are going to talk about in today's video. Those 4 hero changes include junkerqueen, Zarya, Moira, and Brigitte. I'm going to discuss how these changes could impact the future of Overwatch, and also how these changes might impact the rest of the season. My name is Halzeey, and if you enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing. Enjoy. So I'm going to start off with the 2 minor changes, and then I'll get into the 2 major changes. So starting off with support, the 2 minor changes that Blizzard did is they first increased Brigitte's barrier shield from 250 HP to 300. So currently, I feel like Brigitte doesn't really have a place in the meta, right? Dive comps aren't as prominent right now because Roadhog is so strong. The main situations where you would be playing Brigitte is if they had a Winston. Winston gets completely countered by Brigitte, can help defend the supports, and I honestly think that this 250 to 300 HP barrier shield is just kind of placebo buff. Blizzard saying, you know, we're going to give Brigitte a little bit of love, but obviously this isn't going to propel her back into the meta. I think there's a lot of bigger changes that have to be made before she actually becomes good again. Now moving on to Moira, the other minor support change is that dealing damage with her biotic orb now restores a small amount of biotic energy. Now right now, Moira isn't very dominant in higher elos. I mainly see her in lower ranks. And I feel like what this change is going to do is kind of give her more of an identity of what she's supposed to be doing within a team. So right now, Moira's, you know, they can either heal or DPS, I feel like, and they don't really do both. I feel like what this change is going to do is actually give Moira more of an identity that she's supposed to be DPSing and healing her team. So, you know, she goes in, drains up the enemy, gets her biotic charge back up, heals her team, goes back in, kind of does the same thing, right? Because her heal isn't infinite, so she does need to be doing DPS. But overall, I think this is a great change for Moira, and definitely we will be seeing a little bit more of her. So now we're going to move into the major changes, starting off with Zarya. So now we have a change with Zarya for her energy. So energy degeneration reduced from 2.2 to 2 per second, and also the delay before energy degeneration begins after gaining energy increased from 1 to 2 seconds. So what this change means, to put it into perspective, if you're a Zarya at full charge, so 100 charge, before it would take 45 seconds to decrease to 0, and now with this change it's going to take 50 seconds. So overall, 5-second buff Zarya on how long she can hold her charge, and also the delay before the energy starts to drop has increased from 1 to 2 seconds. I don't see this being talked about a lot, but this is actually a pretty big change for Zarya. She's actually now going to be able to deal more damage and to maintain her charge more often. So the first season of Overwatch 2, Zarya was dominating and she received a lot of nerfs. Basically her shield bubbles increased the duration and also disappeared quicker, and what this means is now Zarya is kind of squishy. She dies very quick and she doesn't really have the chance to get up to full charge too often. But I think what this means now with these changes on her energy is that she's going to be able to survive a little bit longer and also be able to put out more damage. She's not going to have to put herself into harm's way so often to gain charge and not have to worry about losing it. Now, especially with Orisa running rampant right now to counter Roadhog, I think this is going to be a great change to help put Zarya back on the map. Right now, even though she counters Orisa, I feel like she's just kind of unplayable. There's a lot better tanks that do almost identically the same thing that she does right now, and I think with these energy changes we might see a little bit more of her, but it's hard to say. Now for the biggest change to the patch and the title of the video, we're gonna get into junkerqueen. So all 3 of junkerqueen's abilities were changed, excluding her ultimate. So starting off with her passive Adrenaline Rush, now heals for the remaining wound damage when an enemy dies with wounds on them. Carnage, her axe, cooldown is now reduced by 2 seconds for each enemy it impacts. So this is a very big change. So for example, if you're getting multi-man Carnage attacks, so like 2, 3-man, 4-mans, right, that ability is going to come up very, very quickly, and it does a lot of damage. It also helps sustain junkerqueen up a lot. Her Jagged Blade was also changed from thrown impact damage reduced from 80 to 50, and also now the direct impact adds 30 damage wound to the stuck target. On top of that, this wound also stacks with other quick melee attacks and returned Jagged Blade hits. So now with the combination of Adrenaline Rush, Carnage, Jagged Blade, really all of her basic ability, she's gonna have so much more sustain than she did before. I feel like that was one of the main problems with junkerqueen on release, is that her abilities felt kind of weak and her sustain was not up to par. But now in the previous patch, buffing her battle roar and now the remainder of her abilities getting buffed, I think junkerqueen's gonna be a force to be reckoned with. Now with projected Roadhog nerfs coming later in January towards the end of the month, I think that junkerqueen is gonna have a free time running rampant in solo queue. Like, think, who's really gonna be there to counter once Roadhog gets gets nerfed, right? Roadhog easily counters junkerqueen right now besides her ultimate, but just hooks her in on cooldown and just kills her instantly. But right now we have some of the most broken tanks like Orisa, Ramattra. I think Ramattra will be okay against junkerqueen just because Ramatra's fists are really strong. They do way too much damage. That's another video in itself. But yeah, definitely be prepared to see some junkerqueens in your competitive games. Not gonna lie, I think this is a pretty good patch from Blizzard. I'm glad that they're not afraid to buff things, because the problem with 5v5 shooters like this is that most of the time the developers just take the nerf approach and it just makes everything in the game weak and nothing dies anymore. But I'm glad to see they're taking the buffing approach rather than just nerfing everything, and that just keeps the meta fresh as well. It keeps us playing new characters from old ones, and I just think that they're heading in the right direction with their balance changes. It also feels like we're getting patches more frequently in Overwatch 2, so that's also another great sign to see, because I feel like after a couple weeks of playing the same characters over and over again, it just gets kind of stale, and that's the time when we should see some buffs or some nerfs to characters. Like, I know, for example, yesterday I was playing tank, and everyone, they just go Roadhog when they start losing, so it's just like, oh, looks like I have to go Roadhog or I have to go Orisa, and it's honestly just kind of boring. Also, I'm kind of ready to see some junkerqueen. I feel like I don't really see junkerqueen that often, and it's nice to have a change up of a tank for once in a while, because I personally, when I play tank, I love playing junkerqueen. She just feels pretty weak compared to the rest of the good tanks right now. I also think with the Zarya buff to counteract that, I think Zarya might be getting to see some play as well, especially when the enemy team goes junkerqueen. I think Zarya has a pretty good matchup into junkerqueen, just because when she uses her Carnage cooldown, that's when you should bubble and you get full charge from it. Basically, you get a full bubble pop. Also, yes, I know today is the Battle of Olympus event and you can get some cool free skins out of there, but I just thought it was mainly more important to talk about the competitive patch before the Battle of Olympus, because primarily we're going to be playing competitive. I know once everyone finishes up with their Battle of Olympus challenges, most people, they just go back to competitive, so I just wanted to talk about the current meta and kind of where I see it going within the next couple of weeks here. Now, do you guys think Blizzard made the correct changes? I personally think they made some pretty good changes. Honestly, the only one that's kind of questionable is the Brigitte one. Like, I feel like not really that many people play her, and I just don't think 50 to 300 HP shield increase is really going to do that much for her. I feel like Blizzard's a little bit scared to buff her just because she was so strong in Overwatch 1, and I just don't think they want to have repeat of that game. So they're taking Brigitte very cautiously when they're buffing her. Also, I'm sorry for all you Moira players and haters. I feel like you're going to be seeing a lot more Moira in your games now. I think just this biotic orb change alone is going to be seeing a lot more DPS Moiras. It's kind of encouraging DPS Moira now, as that she's supposed to be kind of that assassin 1v1 duelist type support, so just get ready for that as well. If you enjoyed today's patch rundown, make sure to drop a like down below and also subscribe to the channel. My name is Halzeey, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.